Hey guys, in this video I want to compare two cameras that I've been using extensively for video the past while, the Panasonic LUMIX S1H and the FUJI X-T4. So I think some context here is necessary so you can see how I've been using these devices. Obviously these are in different price brackets, with the S1H being roughly $1,000 more expensive than the X-T4. And I'll be straight with you, for those of you who shoot video like I do, there really isn't much of a decision. I use video for professional work rarely, unless you can call my YouTube work professional, which some people do not. I'm fine with that. But in addition to that, all the things you gotta use video for when it comes to content creation. I also do extensive handheld video work for documenting my own family and life. So for you more content creator types or parents or those who use video professionally only once in a while like me, you'll probably appreciate the X-T4 more based on just budget alone. And for those of you who are more professional video shooters, you don't need this video at all. You're most likely watching because you're bored. So we mentioned a price, but keep in mind that price extends to more than just device. With the S1H, you'll be spending more on lenses than you will with Fuji lenses. Not that Fuji lenses are cheap, they just are a lot smaller, having less material that can be made more affordably. And with the money that you're saving for a full kit, with that difference you can invest in other things that will bring up your overall production value, which would be nice to have, more than maybe an S1H will. Having said that, the S1H is probably the most powerful cinema machine the mirrorless camera market has to offer right now. And it just has gads of features that the X-T4 does not, that can bring nuance and tactical video control, again, that the X-T4 can't. And we'll get into some of those here in a bit. But let's just start with the exterior. Side by side, you can really see that the S1H is massive compared to the X-T4. X-T4 is still a little larger than its predecessor, but it's still so small compared to the S1H. The S1H weighs 557 grams more, or a little more than a pound more than the X-T4. Not only is it full frame, requiring a larger body and just size in general, but it also has a larger fan. Well, it has a fan that keeps it cool when you're shooting in up to 6K footage for extended periods. The size doesn't always have to be a disadvantage though. When I shoot with this and also with a bracket like this, I get more stabilization, I get more weight and girth, and it allows me to be more stable in my footage. And often I really like that for handheld work. There really isn't a better option than the S1H, at least when it comes to mirrorless cameras, in my opinion. On the other hand, as I repeat often, as a documentarian-style videographer, it's important to remember that the size of your camera is inversely proportional to the amount of time you'll have the camera with you. So for you parents, it's very nice now for me to have an X-T4 and not have to lug around this guy for parenting events. But both cameras have fully articulating screens, which is wonderful for us content creator types. But the SH1 is clever in its LCD design because it allows you to articulate vertically. It does increase the size of the camera, but it's also very nice. And interestingly, the X-T100 of the Fuji lineup did a similar thing. Fuji experimented briefly with both a flip and a vertical articulating back, but abandoned it for whatever reason. I, for one, was excited about that and hoping that Fuji would use it, but they didn't, and that's a bummer for us hybrid types. On the S1H, you'll also find a larger LCD screen with, I'd say, about a third more dots than the X-T4, and that means greater resolution, and that can be nice if you're working on getting critical focus with just the flip screen. It's also easier to see in bright conditions because it's brighter. And unlike the X-T4, the S1H has a top deck display right here, which can be nice depending on how you use your camera during filming. For me personally, I almost never refer to this top deck screen, but I know there are a lot of people out there who shoot low like this, and in that case, it can be nice just to have that there. You also find higher resolution in the electronic viewfinder of the S1H with 2 million more dots of resolution. Again, that's very nice to have for achieving critical focus. Another feature the S1H has showing its advantage as a professional device is a head port headphone port. Most content creators won't be bothered by the lack of that feature on the X-T4, but if you're ever doing work which you can only do once, such as weddings or interviews, having a headphone port is pretty vital. However, we can dongle it up. The X-T4 ships with this guy, which allows you to mount a headphone jack through the USB-C port, but that doesn't help you much if you forget to have it with you in those critical times. As far as battery, while the S1H has a much larger battery, you will get more out of the X-T4 in general. From what I've read anyway, I haven't done a test to compare. But it just depends on what your specs are and how you're using them. But in general, I have seen better numbers from the X-T4, and that's probably a lot to do with the need to power a fan and other things. This is just a more powerful machine in general, larger, it has more stuff to power. So that might be why, but if you're shooting at 1080p, you know, with not using the fan, not using a lot of other things, I'd like to think that the S1H will get you more battery life. But again, I'm not totally positive there because I haven't tested it. When we look at capability, we'll start with the thing that most people are probably going to be most interested in who are watching this video, and that is autofocus. If you're a professional photographer, you likely don't rely on autofocus, so this matters less to you. But if you're a hack like me and you work alone, autofocus becomes critical for convenience and efficiency. And here the X-T4 has a clear advantage benefiting from on-sensor phase detection. This is a powerful autofocus technology which relies on pixel comparison to provide faster and more reliable autofocus, especially when combined with contrast detect as the X-T4 does. The S1H, on the other hand, utilizes only contrast detect autofocus only. This means that the computer needs to move the lens back and forth in front of, behind of the thing that's the focus point to check to see if it's in focus or not. It compares by moving the lens, and so what happens is you always get this little warble behind you. If you've got, like me, if you use it fixed and you're lazy, you don't manual focus, you allow it to autofocus continuous, it'll always just be kind of checking to see if things are in focus or not. And then when something's not, it'll move to try to figure out when it's in focus again. It's just less reliable in general for autofocus. But that phase detect comes at a price. You do have to dedicate pixels across the sensor. They no longer are dedicated to gathering information and color. They become dedicated to comparing for depth, and so you lose a little bit of quality. Is it enough quality that you or I would ever be able to tell that it's happening and that you're losing quality? I don't think so. There are people who claim that they can tell, but I don't believe them. But we also see more focus points in general with the X-T4. There's 425 focus points over the only 225 that are on the S1H, which gives you more refined autofocus control. But a bigger difference that you might see in the different types of sensors is that the S1H utilizes a Bayer style filter, whereas the X-T4 relies on an X-Trans style filter array. Now this could get complicated, and I'm not going to go into the differences. You can look those up on your own. This might have made a bigger difference once upon a time when Moiré was a bigger issue. When you're dealing with Moiré, most Bayer sensors shipped with a anti-alias filter over them so that it would solve Moiré issues. That also added a little bit of softness. So Fuji came out with the X-Trans sensor ostensibly to get rid of that, right? To make it so that there's no Moiré issues because there's less of a pattern. The pattern is larger when it comes to the filter array. Getting more technical than I wanted, but that basically meant that you had no Moiré and you didn't sacrifice sharpness, and that was really cool. But guys, it doesn't really matter anymore. Sensors are so good that you'll never see that hit on sharpness, and you'll never see Moiré in general. So it doesn't matter as much, and less of a call for X-Trans. Although there are still Fuji shooters who will swear that it provides a better look. Personally, for us content creator types, it doesn't matter at all. When it comes to low light, the S1H has fewer megapixels, but the megapixels are larger at 5.93 microns over the X-T4's 3.77 microns. This means theoretically that the S1H will do better in low light, but the X-T4 does have a backside illuminated sensor, which is supposed to give better performance in low light. It also has more megapixels. So is that enough to make up the difference? I wasn't sure, so I ran a test. Here's the results. When it comes to in-body image stabilization, I recently did a comparison in this area where I did my IBIS stress test on the X-T4, and I was totally surprised with the results. I totally expected the S1H to wipe the floor with the X-T4, but that wasn't totally what happened. In general, yes, the S1H performs better and more smoothly, but the X-T4 worked better when you were combining a OIS lens with the device, at least in a controlled environment. So those are the biggest things, and I definitely say the types of things that are probably going to be more greatly influencing a buying decision for you. However, if you're still on the fence, I will mention just a couple more things. If you plan on doing any photography, then you should keep in mind that the X-T4 has at least 2 photographic advantages, probably more, over the S1H. It can shoot 20 frames per second, whereas the S1H can only manage 9 frames per second. The X-T4 also has faster minimum shutter speeds of 32 thousandths of a second, whereas you only get up to 8,000th of a second with the S1H. This can help to shoot in shallower depths of field on an extremely bright day. I should mention also another thing that the S1H does offer that the X-T4 doesn't, and that's a higher resolution composite mode for photography, though the value of this is highly questioned in most real-life photographic situations. I just wanted to mention it. I don't know that any photographer has really gotten value out of it, though. If you have, let me know. But as I already mentioned, there are just so many goodies in this S1H filmmaking bag of tricks that I really don't have time to list all of them in one video. A few that I'll mention are, they're just the tip of the iceberg, but the 6K shooting and the ability to do anamorphic squeezing at 6K. It has a really cool focus transition function, which I have used a lot, that will allow you to pull focus at preset distances. Very cool. But yeah, there are many more things we could talk about, but I think we've definitely covered the buying decision worthy items. But if you feel I've missed anything important from a buying decision standpoint, please let me know so I can add them to a pinned comment below. As for me, probably comes as no surprise that I will be selling my S1H after a year or so of it being a primary or a camera for all my creative work. I have really come to rely on it, and I love it. I felt extremely grateful to be able to have used it, and I'm sad to see it go. But the improved continuous autofocus of the X-T4 itself is reason enough for me to choose the X-T4 over the S1H. It will also be nice if I can use all my little Fuji lenses too for my primary video camera and not have to, invest in another line of lenses also. So that's an added benefit for me personally, and that's also informing the decision. But also just having consistent color profiles to my photography as my videography, that will add some consistency, and I also like that as well. Otherwise though, I do have to say that the color rendition of the S1H has been superb. I've shot it in standard mode, have not altered the color, and I've been completely thrilled with the color output of this camera on my face. So we'll see how I feel about it once we go back to the X-T4, if this is gonna make me feel as good about the way it treats my face. But that's all I've got for you. If anyone has an interest in a well cared for S1H, please let me know, and thank you for watching. Remember to do some good with your video content, and we'll talk to you again real soon.